James's story, calm in the midst of the waves, or Medis tranquillus in undis, as it is recorded on the family crest. In 1854, James Smith, his wife Anne, and 5 children moved from Jackson, Mississippi to Edinburgh to set up the new stove and range business. There was just the matter of handing over the workshop and store he had established in America to his youngest brother. And for this, he needed to be back there in person. He set sail from Liverpool aboard the Arctic, a United States mail and passenger steamer, on the 27th of September 1854, while feeling her way through fog off the Newfoundland banks. The steamer collided with the Vesta, a French vessel. It was one of these disasters common in an age of poor communications and inadequate safety regulations. Although the Arctic remained afloat for several hours, nothing could be done to safeguard the 350 passengers aboard her. She slid slowly under, and James found himself swimming for his life. Wikipedia records the Arctic as a 2,856-ton paddle steamer, the largest of the Collins line and renowned for both speed and luxury. Following the collision, the Arctic sank 4 hours later. Lifeboats with a combined capacity of 180, enough for less than half those on board, were launched in an atmosphere of panic and disorder. The principle of women and children first was ignored. From around the estimated 400 on board, only 24 passengers and 61 crew survived. All the women and children perished. In all, more than 300 lives were lost. No one was called into account for the disaster, and no official inquiry was held. Meanwhile, Vesta suffered damage to the bow, but the watertight bulkhead remained intact. The only casualties were about a dozen, who precipitately left the ship in a lifeboat. After the collision, the Vesta sailed slowly on to St. John's, Newfoundland, and once repaired, went on to sail for a further 20 years. Shipwreckworld.com adds further details. In 1852, Arctic had captured the eastbound Atlantic speed record, becoming the fastest ship in the North Atlantic. In 1854, her engines had been overhauled to burn less coal, making her lighter and more economic to run. However, the new engine caused the hull to take on more strain, making maintenance more difficult. Disaster struck at 12 noon on September 27, 1854. The Arctic had been fatally wounded, and after futilely trying to plug up the hull below the waterline, the captain decided to head for Cape Race at full steam. This desperate act only helped flood her hull more, with boilers extinguished by the incoming sea and her engines stopped for the last time. James did not make it into a lifeboat, but shortly after he entered the water, he managed to drag himself onto a raft. The raft was so small as to be awash. Every wave which came found James shivering and defenceless. He'd just decided that he would not give a great deal for his chances when he saw the basket. It was about 3 feet long by 2 feet wide, and it was lined with tin, a basket which had been used by cabin stewards for storing plate. James paddled over to it and hoisted it aboard. He calculated that with a tight squeeze it was just big enough to sit in. He sat in it, squeezed the water from his clothes, and for 3 days and 2 nights remained foodless, waterless, but tolerably dry, while the waves washed over the raft and lapped the sides of the basket. On spying the sailing ship Cambria, outward bound from Greenock, James stood up, waving his shirt until he was sighted and picked up. James recorded the events on the shirt he wore and used to attract attention. James was landed in Quebec and made his way to Jackson, where he transferred his business to his brother Robert, before setting sail again for home the following spring. This account is abridged from the official company history of the first 100 years, 1854 to 1954, by Alistair Borthwick, with additional detail from Wikipedia and shipwreckworld.com. There are other accounts available, including YouTube SS Arctic Disaster Top 15 Facts and mandogstroke.com, The Wicker Basket.
Essie, master stove maker since 1854.